Okay, gang, and welcome back to another Python video. Today we're going to talk a little bit about, how we bring things into a Python program and maybe the differences between reading from a file and our import statements. So let's start off with what we might see at the top of a Python program, which are import statements. So these are where we're going to bring libraries in or other Python programs. This is not how you talk to other files like CSV files or text files. So you might say something like this. So there's a couple things about this. So NumPy or NumPy is a separate library that you would install. We might also install things like where we want a particular module. We might see something like this, an asterisk. If I had another Python program that I had written, I might say something like this: from my other Python code, import all of the functions that are in there. But something to notice here is that I've included this import NumPy as NP. Well, NP is now going to be how I refer to everything from that. So I will have function calls or method calls down below that'll have something like that. It'll be NP that. I won't have code that refers to the entire library. Another example might be if we're doing stuff from PyTorch. So I might have an import statement like this: import torch.nn as nn. And so I only refer to it as this. So I guess what we're trying to say here is that we can make a reference to something and rename it. Now, the reason I'm spending a little bit of time on this is because we do the same thing when we're going to import other files. So what I'm going to do now is we'll create another set of functions so that we can interact with our file. And just for fun, I'll show you what's in the file. So here's what that looks like. It's just a simple text file, right? And I'm just showing you this so that when we read it in, you'll know what we're seeing. So let's create a function that'll do just that. So I'm going to say function read file, and we'll keep it all lowercase. And then I'm going to pass it the file name. Now the name convention here doesn't really matter. And then while I'm doing that, I'm also going to define our main. And we will say down here that file name. Now you could call it anything here because remember this is specific to the function and this is just a name. But I'm going to go ahead and call this test.text. And then what we're going to do is we're going to call read file, and we're going to pass it file name. Okay, so now we get up here and we say, well, how do we open a file? Well, probably one of the most common ways that we do that is open, right? So it makes sense. So we're going to do something like this with, and we're going to pay attention to two things. We're going to pay attention to what we call the file once we're opening it, and then how we're going to go through the lines. Now you can see that I'm here in idle, and the minute I'm here in idle, my keywords and tricky phrases are actually highlighted. So I'm going to say open, so Python or idle recognizes this, and then what am I going to do? What am I referring to? Well, you can see here that it wants a file and then a mode of some kind. Now we just want to read it, so the file will be file name, whatever that is, whatever we decided to use, but of course we used the file name. And then I'm going to say we're going to just read this, and that'll be it. That's all that we need to do for that, and so that gives us a file name. Oops, I forgot something. I forgot the whole point of this video. As, and here we get to create a name the same way that we did up here. And so I might say F, I might say data, so we'll do something like that. Now it's very common you'll see very short things as F. Now we got to remember that whatever we use here is going to be how we refer to it later on. Now I'm going to call it data because, you know, this is the kind of stuff that I deal with on a regular basis. And then I'm going to say for line in what? Well, in data. Now I could call this something else, but because I'm dealing with lines, and that sort of makes it easy to work with. And all that I'm going to do is print the line. And we'll remember that when we do that, these come in as strings. Now finally, what we have to do, of course, is call main. All right, so I'm going to save this and then we'll run it. So I called this file IO, and so we can go ahead and run this now. All right, so this is kind of fun. I was so worried about doing these import statements that I forgot that some of this stuff doesn't actually exist. I'll leave this error in there, but of course this code doesn't exist. I was just using it as an example, so I'm going to comment that out. Now the other thing I suppose I ought to point out is that on this system I do have these installed. So let's run it again. There we go. So there we have it. We've got our lines from our code. Now we could suppress the line feeds if you wanted to. I'll leave that up to you. But the two things that we really want to get out of this video is really that we've got import statements, and these are for really two things. Importing modules that are not part of the base Python install, or importing code that you've written in other Python programs. And then when we're interacting with text files or spreadsheets or CSV files, things like that, we want to use, well, a very common way to do it anyway is with open. And both of these have a name that we refer to them as. So when we access them later on, we're going to access them by the sort of nickname that we give them, rather than the name of the file or the name of the module. There we go. So that is how you would do a simple open and read through the lines of an input file. That'll do it for this one. It's programming, it's Python. You can do this.